Hello everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel. Happy New Year, and this is the very first review that I'm doing of 2021, and it is part of my special series of reviews that I am doing all year long. And that's right, I said year, not month. One of the things I really love to do when it comes to reviewing movies on this channel is to try to tackle a series of reviews that will take me some time, whether they take the course of a couple months or just one single month. Like in 2015, I tackled all the Gamera movies and the Pixar movies. In 2017, I did all the King Kong movies. 2018, I did all the Godzilla movies. 2019, I did the Marvel Cinematic Universe. 2020, I did the Friday the 13th series. And for 2021, I'm going to be tackling a series of movies that I've been wanting to do for a long time, probably for about 3 years now, and that's the entire Walt Disney Animation catalog. Now, I've already reviewed a handful of their movies already, from Frozen up until Frozen 2, but I haven't reviewed any of the movies before Frozen, and that's going to change with this year. Now, before I get started, I should add some clarification on what qualifies as an official Walt Disney animated feature. This basically means any movie that is fully animated or mostly animated, like about 90% animated. That means movies like Song of the South, Pete's Dragon, and Enchanted will not be in this series of videos, but maybe one day I'll review those movies. And they have to be categorized in a certain era of Walt Disney's catalog, such as the Golden Age, Wartime Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, Renaissance Age, Post-Renaissance, Revival Age. You get the idea. And like I said, this series of videos is going to span the entire year because I've done my research. I'll be reviewing 52 movies every single Wednesday of 2021. And with all that being said, let's hop into the very first movie. And that very first movie in question is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which came out in 1937 and is the very first feature-length animated movie. I'm sure a lot of people watching this have grown up with Disney Animation, but just in case you don't know the plot to this movie, it follows a young princess named Snow White, who is the fairest of them all. But unfortunately, her evil stepmother, the Queen, doesn't tolerate that so much because she wants to be the fairest of them all. So she plots to kill Snow White, but Snow White manages to escape her grasp and comes across a little hut owned by the Seven Dwarfs. And the movie is pretty much the Queen trying to go after Snow White as she befriends these Seven Dwarfs, who all have very distinct personalities, mainly because their names are their character traits. So with over 50 movies in Disney's animation catalog, and with Raya and the Last Dragon being the studio's 59th film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is often regarded as some of the lesser tier movies. I mean, let me first explain before I get any hate in the comments. What I mean by that is, a lot has changed since this first movie came out. I talked to a lot of people who don't really put Snow White in their top 10 lists of favorite Disney animated features. And when you first think about it, you can kinda see why. Because, okay, it has the safety net of being the first feature-length animated film, which that itself is groundbreaking, but there are just so many other Disney movies that have come out since then that have improved on what Snow White has done. However, I just rewatched this movie recently, and I haven't seen it since it was on VHS. So that goes to show you how long it's been since I've seen Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It surprisingly holds up. Despite being the first feature-length animated film, it's great. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that is really admirable. For one, the animation still holds up to this very day. One of my favorite animated movies of all time is Toy Story. In fact, it's my favorite of all time. But if there's any problem with that original Toy Story, it's that the animation just doesn't quite hold up, and that's only because the technology wasn't quite there with Toy Story. But with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, it just looks like a work of art. The backgrounds are beautiful, the character designs and the way they move is just seamlessly. It has this timeless feel to it, which was one of the goals that Walt Disney wanted to try to pull off with this movie, is that it's going to stand the test of time because this is such a timeless tale. And I think the animation holding up as well as it does for 84 years really says something about how timeless Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs actually is. I did notice there are a few moments where some of the characters aren't animated for certain frames, and there are a few animation glitches, most notably when the dwarves are introduced. When we see Happy, Grumpy, Bashful, and Sneezy picking away at the minerals in the mine, the impact of their pickaxes are timed with the song, and it changes depending on the beats of the song, and when it changes again, sometimes the animation's a little glitchy. But it's one of those things where A, you have to be really paying attention, you have to be a pure animation nerd to really catch that, and B, this was the first feature-length animated movie ever made, so they're really working with new ground. They're attempting something that hasn't been done before, so you can give them a pass on this movie. But the animation is just absolutely stellar, and as I said before, timeless. And speaking of those seven dwarves, they're all great characters. Even though they're mostly one-note characters, you still remember them. You like how Doc is the leader of the dwarves, but at the same time, he's a stammerer and will step over his own words, something a lot of us tend to do very often. You remember Grumpy for just, well, being grumpy and also superstitious. Happy is always cheerful, Bashful is always bashful, Sleepy, despite looking high a lot of the time, is, well, sleepy. Sneezy is probably my least favorite of the dwarves. And then there's Dopey, who, for the longest time, I always thought he was a child. It wasn't until I picked up the movie on Blu-ray where it may have dawned on me, oh, he's probably just an old man too, except he's bald and doesn't have a beard. But there's something about Dopey where maybe it's because he's mute, he has this childlike mentality to him, and he's probably the one next to Grumpy who sticks out the most. But funny enough, Grumpy is the only dwarf that actually has something of a character arc, where he starts off one way as a grump, and then he ends in a completely different mood. So if there's any sign of character development in this movie, it's probably with Grumpy, because you're sure as hell not going to get it with Snow White herself, which people would say that Snow White is one of the weaker Disney princesses, and I don't blame them at all, because Snow White herself is not that interesting of a character. You don't really know a whole lot about her, but at the same time, her personality is so very sweet, she's very kind, she's so innocent that you really have to have a heart of stone to hate this character. And when I went into this movie just recently with the mindset of, am I going to be irritated by Snow White? By the end of the movie I was like, no, she might not be super interesting, but she's very likable, she's not whiny, although I can see some people being irritated by her voice, but I like Snow White. Now, as for the villain of the movie, the Queen, as a character, she's not super interesting. However, the way she's animated and the way she's designed, she really sticks out. She is cold, she is heartless, and the fact that she's willing to go as far as to kill her stepdaughter just so she could be the prettiest person in the world says a lot. That is pure evilness right there. And when she turns into the old lady, that scares me. Although, to be honest, when she first appears as the old lady in this movie, it didn't scare me as much as the Disneyland ride, where you see the Queen in the mirror, then she turns around, and it's the old lady, and you're like, oh shit. God, I miss Disneyland. So for those of you who are missing Disneyland as well, I hope these videos can help you through that. And speaking of scary, one thing that you really have to take into consideration with this movie is that it might be a kid's movie, but there are a lot of sequences in this movie that are sure as hell not for kids. For example, the overall plot of the movie where the Queen wants to kill Snow White and actually succeeds at killing her. There's the sequence where the huntsman almost cuts out her heart, but he can't do it and he tells Snow White to run into the woods. And then you get all this creepy imagery where logs are turning into alligators, trees have faces, branches start to turn into really skinny hands with little skinny fingers. It is straight up terrifying, and I would love to be a fly on the wall in 1937 to see what kids' reactions to these moments were, because the forest sequence is really scary, but the end of the movie where Snow White is actually killed, the dwarves dwarves hunt down the queen like she's Frankenstein's monster. Anytime the vultures are on screen and are just in the area knowing that death is about to happen. The funeral scene involving Snow White. Like, this movie really doesn't pull any punches. Now granted, it does have the happy ending that you desperately want to see, but other than that, this movie has balls. And for being the first feature-length animated movie, I bet that's something not a lot of people really take into consideration. Now I want to talk about some of the bad things with this movie. I already mentioned some of the animation glitches or lack of animation in certain frames, but again, I can give that a pass because this was something new that was being attempted at the time. But another thing that doesn't really work with this movie, and to really give you an idea that this is unknown territory, is that the movie is poorly paced. There are two sequences in my mind that stick out as being way too long. There's the sequence where all the dwarfs have to wash up before they're served dinner. And given that I haven't seen this movie in a long time, I completely forgot about this sequence, and I thought to myself, Snow White's just telling you guys to wash your hands. You don't have to wash your faces and beards. Like, you're really taking this a little too far. And I think the dance party in the dwarf's cottage goes on for a little too long. But at the same time, I can kind of give them some slack with this because, again, this is the first feature-length animated film. And then the last thing about the movie that I think is a legit criticism, and everyone will agree on this, the prince is a non-character. Like, the prince shows up in two scenes. One of them, he doesn't even talk, and I mean, I get why he's there because you need to have the happy ending, but he's just a non-existent character. But those are really all the criticisms I have, because despite the fact that this is the first feature-length animated film, it's still great despite that. The animation is absolutely stunning, the songs are great, it has a very timeless story, even though the ending does feel like Deus Ex Machina in a way where it's executed. It's like the season finale of The Mandalorian, where technically it's been set up, so you really can't call it a cop-out. And yeah, it's a great movie all around. And on top of all that, it's a groundbreaking movie and set many standards that Disney would follow with all their animated movies in the future, for better and for worse. For example, the side characters and sometimes the villains would be more interesting than the main characters. The side characters would have a more cartoonish look than the main characters. The songs, the fact that most of the Disney animated films are adaptations of pre-existing material and are actually the most popular iterations of that material. Yeah, for those of you who complain about Disney being completely unoriginal nowadays, that's been going on since the 30s, so yeah, I don't know what to tell you. But regardless of that, it is a fantastic, inspiring movie. And I also think it was one of the first, if not the very first movie to utilize storyboards as part of the filmmaking process. I know Gone with the Wind was one of the first live action films to utilize storyboards. And you know, because I'm me, the very first Japanese film to utilize storyboards was Godzilla. So yeah, I had to throw in Godzilla somehow. Never thought I'd do it in a Snow White review, but back to Snow White, I would say it's worth seeing in your lifetime. It is an essential animated film, especially if you're either a fan of animation or you're getting into it as a career. This is an essential movie to watch. And like I said, ignoring the fact that this is the first animated feature and it's very groundbreaking, it's still a timeless tale and a terrific movie. It's not one of my top 10 favorites, but considering again that Disney has made over 50 movies, it's pretty fantastic. And there you go, that's my review for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which means 1 down, 51 to go. Next Wednesday, we're going to be looking at Disney's second animated feature, Pinocchio, which I personally think is better than Snow White. But again, that's just me. Now I want to know what you guys think about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. If you've seen it, what did you think? Where does this rank in terms of your favorite Disney animated features? Does it even rank at all? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, leave a comment, support my Patreon page, follow me on social medias, including Twitch. And until then, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there is only one.